My 6-year-old daughter was banned from Christmas dinner. My mom told her she didn't deserve to eat with them. My sister said there wasn't enough food for her and locked her in an empty room. When I found out, I didn't yell. I took action. The next day, their lives began to unravel. That's how it started. Or ended, depending on how you look at it. Christmas, the one day that's supposed to be about family, about kindness, about love. Instead, it turned into something else. Something that still makes my hands shake when I think about it. That morning, my husband Evan woke up sick. The kind of sick where he couldn't lift his head. Our toddler, Theo, was worse. Fever, flushed cheeks, little coughs that sounded too big for his small lungs. So when Lucy, 6 years old, bright as a spark plug and twice as loud, begged to go to Christmas dinner without us, I hesitated. "It's just Grandma's," she said, clutching the drawing she'd made for my mom. "I'll be good." My mother, Elaine, had already called earlier, promising, "Of course we'll take care of her. She'll have fun with her cousins." Cousins? That meant Chloe, 9, and Emma, 7, Carolyn's girls. Carolyn, my older sister, the kind of woman who could turn a compliment into a competition. So I said yes, against my better judgment. Lucy put on her red velvet dress, the one she'd been twirling in all week, and left with her overnight bag. I told myself it would be fine. That's what we do, right? We trust family. Around 6 o'clock, I sent a text to check in. No reply. I waited 10 minutes. Called. No answer. I tried again. Then again. Finally, my mom picked up, sounding flustered, like she'd been caught mid-excuse. "Hey, Mom," I said. "How's Lucy?" "Oh, she's fine." Something in her tone wasn't fine. "Can I talk to her?" My mom hesitated. "She's in timeout right now." "Timeout?" "She was being a bit rude to Carolyn's girls. You know how sensitive they are. We told her to sit in the guest room until she could behave." "She's 6, I said. "What did she even do?" "It's nothing serious. She just needs to learn her place. Her place. Mom, can you put her on the phone?" There was a short silence then. "Not right now." "Dinner's about to start. Click." She hung up. For a while, I just stood there in the kitchen, the phone still in my hand, my mind running through excuses. Maybe Lucy threw a tantrum. Maybe they were trying to teach her manners. Maybe. But none of it fit. I know my family, and when they start using words like rude and respect, it means someone challenged their control. And Lucy? She doesn't know how to play politics. She's honest. Too honest. I grabbed my keys. The drive to my parents' house was 30 miles of black ice and red taillights. The radio was off. My heartbeat filled the silence. I kept picturing Lucy, the way she'd carefully packed her stuffed rabbit, the glitter star she made for Grandma's tree. She'd been so proud, so excited. The idea of her sitting in timeout while everyone else laughed over dinner made my stomach twist. When I pulled into their driveway, the house looked like something out of a Christmas movie. Lights glowing, music faintly audible through frosted windows. But behind that warmth, something was rotten. My mother opened the door with that forced surprise people get when they've been caught doing something wrong. "Clara!" "Oh, honey, you didn't have to drive all the way. Where's Lucy?" Her smile faltered. "She's fine." Just cooling off, I stepped past her. Laughter floated from the dining room. The kind that sounds easy and full when you've done something cruel and convinced yourself it was justified. Carolyn was pouring wine at the table, her husband Blake sitting beside her, his eyes glued to his plate like he'd rather disappear. "Where is she?" I asked again. Carolyn sighed. "In the spare room." She was being impossible. Cried because she couldn't sit between her cousins. We told her to calm down before she could rejoin the table. "Did you feed her?" Carolyn blinked. "She'll eat when she apologizes." I stared at her. Apologizes for what? For being ungrateful, she said. She told Mom she didn't want to eat the food if it meant sitting by herself. Can you imagine? Yes, I said. I can. The spare room door was at the end of the hallway. It was closed. When I tried the handle, it didn't move. Locked. The key was still in the lock. I turned it slowly. The door opened. Inside, the room was dim. No light on. No blanket on the bed. And there was Lucy, curled up on the floor, her little dress wrinkled, her cheeks wet. She looked up so fast it broke me. "Mommy?" she whispered. I knelt beside her, pulled her into my arms. She clung to me like she thought I might disappear too. "They said I was bad," she mumbled into my shoulder. "They said I don't deserve to eat with them." Her stomach growled quietly between her words. "They said there wasn't enough food." I closed my eyes. Behind me, Carolyn's voice floated from the hall. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Clara." When I carried Lucy through the living room, no one met my eyes. Blake looked away. My mother fussed with her napkin. Even Chloe and Emma stopped giggling. That's what silence sounds like when guilt fills the room. I reached the door. "Clara," Mom said, her voice strained. "You're overreacting." I laughed. "Once. You said the same thing when you hit me for crying at my own birthday party." The words came out before I could stop them, but I didn't regret it. I walked out into the cold. Lucy fell asleep in the car on the drive home, still holding her stuffed rabbit. Every time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw her small face, peaceful but pale. She stirred once and whispered, "Mommy?" "Yes, baby." "They don't like me." My throat closed. "That's not true," I said. "They just don't deserve you." She nodded, half asleep, believing me because she needed to. At home, I tucked her into bed beside Theo, kissed her forehead, and turned off the light. Then I sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone. My mother's number was still on the screen. I called. She answered on the second ring. "Clara, if you're calling to apologize..." I hung up. The house was quiet when I woke. Lucy was still asleep, curled around her stuffed rabbit like it could keep her safe. Theo was snoring softly in the next room. The clock on the wall ticked the same rhythm it had when I made that phone call last night, the one I hung up on. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the dent in my palm from where I'd gripped my phone too hard. Everything looked the same. The coffee mug, the stack of unopened mail, the hum of the refrigerator. But something had shifted. I kept seeing her face. Lucy's small, trembling voice. "They said I don't deserve to eat with them." I thought I'd known my family. I thought I'd understood what they were capable of. But apparently, I'd been generous. Because cruelty isn't new in my family. It's just better dressed now. When I was little, the house was split into teams. Mom and Carolyn, Team A. Dad and me, Team B. It was supposed to be a joke. "Mom's favorite is Carolyn," Dad would tease. "And mine's Clara." Everyone laughed. I did too, because I didn't understand that some jokes come with fine print. Carolyn was 5 years older, already worldly at 10, already knowing how to flatter, how to perform. She'd sit beside Mom and whisper adult things she didn't understand, and Mom would beam like she was raising a prodigy. Me? I was the baby, which sounded sweet until it meant be quiet. Dad used to shield me. He'd sneak me chocolate after dinner and whisper, "You've got a good heart, kiddo. Don't let them tell you it's a flaw." Then, when I was 9, he died. Suddenly, the house shrank. All the warmth left with him. Mom didn't cry much, at least not where I could see. She just got efficient, like she was running a business. And Carolyn stepped right into the vacancy. After that, there were no more teams. Just one. Mom and Carolyn became a unit. They cooked together, laughed together, made decisions together. I became the third person in my own family. When I spoke, they corrected me. When I stayed quiet, they said I was sulking. Once, on my 10th birthday, this one sticks, I started crying when everyone sang happy birthday. I wasn't sad, just overwhelmed. Mom hissed, "Stop making a scene," and slapped me on the arm. She told everyone I was too sensitive. Carolyn laughed. I didn't cry at birthdays after that. I learned not to cry at all. By high school, the pattern was carved in stone. Carolyn got the later curfews, the lighter chores, the new clothes. When she talked back, Mom called it confidence. When I did, it was attitude, so I kept a private record. Tiny mental notches, a secret ledger of injustice. I never said a word. I just added one tally at a time. By the time I turned 18, that list was long enough to build a wall. So I left. I got a scholarship for finance. Dad would have been proud. Mom said, "I don't know why you want to study something so cold." I said, "Because numbers don't lie." She didn't laugh. I worked my way through school, took night shifts, saved every penny. The day I paid off my loans, I sat in the dark and realized I'd never once asked for help. That's how I knew I'd healed wrong. When I bought my first house, Mom called it impractical. When Carolyn leased a new SUV, Mom said, "Good for you, you deserve it." Still, I kept the peace. Even helped Mom when she needed it, paid off bills, helped her refinance her mortgage, signed as a guarantor so she could get a better rate. It's funny, really. The same house I used to tiptoe through like a ghost, and I ended up keeping it afloat for years. Carolyn? She contributed moral support and a casserole dish. When we both became mothers, I thought maybe things would soften. They didn't. Lucy was 3 when the new version of the old game began. At Sunday lunch, she spilled her juice. Mom snapped, "You're too old for that, Lucy!" "Be careful." 10 minutes later, Chloe, Carolyn's older daughter, did the same thing. Mom gasped like she'd witnessed a tragedy. "Oh, sweetheart, accidents happen." "Don't cry, we'll get you another one." Carolyn added, "I'll buy you a toy later, baby." Lucy looked at me across the table, confused. I smiled like it didn't sting. Then came the thank you rule. When Lucy forgot, Mom called it rude. When Emma forgot, Mom said, "She's shy today." Crayons, cookies, turn-taking. Every time the verdict was the same. Lucy wrong, cousins right. Each time I told myself not to make it a scene. Not in front of the kids. I'd sit there smiling, chewing my food, pretending family was still worth something. But after last night, after that locked door, I finally understood. It didn't start with Lucy. It started with me. All those years of being told to lower my voice, to take the smaller piece, to say thank you louder, those lessons didn't vanish. They just changed targets. My daughter became the new punching bag for an old pattern, and I'd let it happen because I wanted to believe we'd grown up. I thought if I kept my calm, I could rise above them, be better. But calm only works on reasonable people. On my family, it was fuel. They read silence as surrender. So last night, when I didn't yell, when I carried Lucy out of that house without a word, they thought they'd won again. They didn't know silence could be strategy. The first few days after Christmas were eerily calm, like the quiet between lightning and thunder. Evan had finally stopped coughing. Theo's fever broke. Lucy, my little survivor, was back to drawing on every available surface. The house smelled like crayons and disinfectant, the normal scent of our lives. But beneath all that softness, something was sharp. I sat at the kitchen table, my laptop open, a dozen tabs glowing in the dark, bank accounts, billing portals, payment histories. Every number on those screens had my name attached to it. Every automatic transfer, every support payment I'd been making out of duty, out of guilt, out of habit. 15 years of financial caretaking, disguised as family loyalty. I took a slow sip of coffee and started shutting them down one by one. Click. The monthly grocery stipend, gone. Click. The automatic bill pay for the utilities, canceled. Click. The mortgage transfer that had quietly left my account on the first of every month, deleted. Each sound was its own small thunderclap. It didn't feel vengeful. It felt administrative. Like I was finally filing paperwork on a crime that had gone unsolved for decades. When Evan walked in, I half expected him to tell me I was being petty. That's what my mother would have said. Instead, he looked over my shoulder, saw what I was doing, and nodded. "Need help?" "No," I said. "I've got it." He smiled, just barely. "I figured." That was all. No moral debate, no talk of forgiveness. Just quiet understanding. By the third day, I'd finished the cleanup. Every connection between me and my mother's finances was severed. I even drafted a polite little email to the bank, just to make it official. "Dear Sir or Madam, please note that I will no longer be contributing to the mortgage payments or household expenses associated with the account under my mother's name." It looked almost professional, which somehow made it colder. I hit send and, for once, slept without the knot in my chest tightening. The first call came the morning the mortgage payment was due. The bank had scheduled it for the second since the first was a holiday. "Clara," my mother's voice was all syrup and tension, "there's been some sort of issue with the bank." "The payment didn't go through, no issue," I said. "I canceled it." Pause. "You canceled it?" "Yes." Another pause, longer this time. Then the panic started to bloom through the phone line. "You can't just—" "Clara, they'll penalize us for a missed payment. Why would you—" "Because I'm done," I said. "I'm not paying your mortgage anymore." "All this," she snapped, "because of a 6-year-old's tantrum?" The words landed like a slap. "You mean my daughter's punishment," I said. "Locked in a room without food while you all ate dinner?" She wasn't locked. She was. "You're being dramatic." There it was again. That word. Always that word. "Goodbye, Mom." "Don't you hang up on me." Click. I didn't hang up out of spite. I hung up because I'd already lived that conversation too many times to mistake it for something new. The second call came an hour later. Carolyn, of course. "Wow," she said. "Mom's in tears." "You must be proud." "I'm not proud," I said. "I'm relieved." "Oh, come on. You're really doing all this over discipline? Lucy threw a fit and you're—" "She's 6. She was rude." "She was hungry," I said. "And scared." "But I'm sure that detail didn't make it into your version." Carolyn snorted. "You're being dramatic." "Just like Lucy?" I finished for her. She went quiet for half a second. "Guess we have drama queen number 2 now," she said, voice syrupy with triumph. I almost laughed. "No," I said. "I think we just have one less fool." Click. You'd think the silence after that would feel empty, but it didn't. It felt clean. I sat there staring at the phone, half expecting it to start ringing again, but it didn't. Maybe they'd finally realized shouting into a wall wasn't productive. Or maybe they were too busy realizing what I'd actually done. Because for the first time in my life, I hadn't just said no, I'd followed it with an action they couldn't undo. I used to think breaking a cycle meant forgiveness. That's what every self-help book and sentimental movie says, right? Forgive to move on. But I'd done that. For years. I'd forgiven every slight, every manipulation, every cutting comment. It hadn't freed me. It had trained them. Forgiveness without consequence is just permission, and I was done giving it. At first, I thought they'd finally gone quiet. For almost a week, no calls, no messages, just silence heavy enough to sound like peace. Then the phone started ringing. Aunt Joanne went first, syrupy as ever. "Clara, honey, I just wanted to check in. You know, people are worried. They say you've been Too strict with Lucy, making her skip meals when she misbehaves? That can really hurt a child's sense of safety. I went cold. Who told you that? Oh, I'm not saying anyone's judging, she said quickly. We just thought you should know. It's coming from a good place. I hung up before she could finish pretending it was kindness. By evening, 3 more had called, each one delivering the same soft lecture. Children need to eat. You can't punish a child that way. We're only trying to help. They didn't ask if it was true. They'd already decided it was. And deep down, I knew exactly who had started it. 2 days later, the school called. The secretary's voice was polite but tight. Hi, Mrs. Hayes. Could you come in tomorrow morning? The teachers would like to discuss something in person. Something in person. My stomach dropped. When I arrived, 2 teachers were waiting in a small office. They weren't unkind, but they looked like people forced into a conversation they didn't want to have. Mrs. Hayes, one began gently. We've received some concerns about Lucy's well-being. Concerns, I repeated. My voice didn't sound like mine. Yes, the other said, glancing down at a notepad as if afraid to make eye contact. We've been told she hasn't been eating properly, that she's been isolated in her room for long periods, that there might be some stress at home. The words hung in the air like smoke. My first thought was disbelief. Then the nausea hit. They were talking about me. The teachers looked uncomfortable. We're required to follow procedure, one said softly. So Child Protective Services will be notified. It's just a precaution. A precaution. Like a seatbelt or a flu shot. I nodded numbly, thanked them for their time, and walked out before my body could betray me. I made it to the parking lot, sat in my car, and finally broke. I didn't sob loudly. I just sat there shaking, one hand over my mouth. Somewhere, my mother and sister were probably sipping tea, talking about how I'd brought this on myself. Days passed without a visit. Each one stretched thin, vibrating with dread. I barely slept. Every knock, every car door outside made my heart leap. I kept checking the front window like a criminal expecting a raid. Evan told me it would be fine. We have nothing to hide, he said. I believed him in theory. In practice, I still jumped at the sound of my own phone vibrating. By the 5th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I called my mother. She answered on the 2nd ring. Clara. Calm. Controlled. The voice of someone who'd been waiting for this call. You called the school, I said. She didn't deny it. People were worried. People? Or you and Carolyn? A pause. Then, maybe if you hadn't abandoned your family, things wouldn't have gone this far. I almost laughed. You mean if I'd kept paying your bills? She sighed, as though I were a child refusing to eat vegetables. We're struggling with the mortgage, Clara. Families help each other. There it was, the threat disguised as virtue. So you lied to the school? You told them I was neglecting my kid? I told them I was worried, she said smoothly. Because clearly, you're not thinking straight. You've cut yourself off from everyone who cares about you. Everyone who cares about me? My voice came out quiet, steady. You mean everyone who uses me? Don't twist this into drama, she snapped. And something in me finally snapped back. You've spent my whole life calling it drama when it was just truth. You controlled me, then you tried to control my daughter. That ends now. She tried to speak, but I hung up. For a moment, I just sat there listening to the silence, my pulse roaring in my ears. It was done. The next day, I started making calls of my own. 2 relatives had been there on Christmas. The quiet ones, the ones who had watched Lucy's tears and said nothing. Both answered like they'd been waiting for the phone to ring. Yes, one admitted softly. I saw it. She was locked in that room. We thought maybe you'd agreed to it. I hadn't. I know. We're sorry. We'll tell the truth if anyone asks. That was all I needed. Proof. Witnesses. The truth they'd all tried to bury under gossip. A week later, CPS finally came. 2 social workers, one young, one older, arrived mid-morning, badges visible, expressions neutral. They were kind but meticulous. They walked through every room, checked the fridge, asked to see where the kids slept. Everything was spotless, stocked, ordinary. They spoke with Evan, then with me, then gently with Lucy. She told them about her stuffed rabbit, about how Mommy made pancakes on Sundays. She didn't seem scared, just curious why these strangers were asking so many questions. After an hour, they thanked us for our time and left. I closed the door and finally exhaled, my hands shaking so hard I had to lean on the wall. I wasn't angry anymore, just hollow. The next day, I called a lawyer. I told her what happened. "Keep everything," she said. "Messages, receipts, call logs. If CPS contacts you again, you'll have proof ready." So I did. I made a folder. Every transfer, every bank statement, every note of support I'd ever sent them. My life, reduced to digital evidence. Then I waited. Every hour that passed felt like a coin flipping in the air. Days went by with no word from CPS, just the sound of my phone not ringing. Fear turned into something sharper. Resolve. I opened the extended family group chat, the one they used for birthdays, baby pictures, and backhanded compliments. My fingers didn't shake as I typed. "Since rumors are spreading, here are the facts." Lucy was locked in a room and denied food by my mother and sister on Christmas Day. After that, I stopped supporting them financially. In response, they reported me to Lucy's school, claiming I neglect my children. I have bank statements showing 15 years of support and 2 relatives who witnessed what happened. If these lies continue, my lawyer will take action. Then I hit send. For a few seconds, the chat was silent. Then messages started pouring in. "Wait, what? I was there. It's true." Lucy was crying. "We should have said something." Within minutes, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Some messages were apologies, some were stunned silence. And in the middle of it all, Carolyn tried to defend herself, then stopped replying altogether. By evening, Mom and Carolyn were the only ones typing. Everyone else had left the chat. A week later, an envelope arrived in the mail. "After investigation," the letter read, "no safety concerns were found. No further action will be taken." I read it twice, just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. Then I set it down, feeling the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. That night, I tucked Lucy into bed. She curled up under her blanket and whispered, "We're safe now, right?" I smiled. "We are." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, the house felt still. Not tense, not waiting. Just peaceful. Almost a year later, everything's different. Mom lost the house in July. She couldn't keep up once I stopped paying. Carolyn didn't help. Turns out the favorite draws the line at money. Mom rents a small place now in a bad part of town. From what I hear, she and Carolyn barely speak. After the truth came out, the rest of the family cut them off. Everyone knows what happened. The locked door, the lies to the school, the false report. The sympathy they expected never came. They're the outcasts now. I still see the others. We spend holidays together, the way normal families do. It's easy now. No tension, no pretending. Lucy's thriving. Theo's talking nonstop. Sometimes a cousin mentions that Mom's been asking around for help again. No one's offering. Carolyn's busy saving her own image, pretending she had nothing to do with it. I don't hate them. I just don't owe them anything anymore. So what do you think? Did I go too far, or not far enough?